Good evening, everyone. It's Jackie Williams, and tonight I want to focus on the Nature's Harvest bundle. So this is a beautiful set of dies with your cornflowers or daisies or sunflowers. I think they could kind of be whatever you wanted them to be depending on how you color them. And then of course it's got the coordinating dies that cut the outline of the images, as well as some standalone dies such as this. I would call that a cornflower, and some kind of more wheat and some branches here. So I'll show you some samples using all of those later. But also want to show you that in this set, or in this suite, I should say, there are also these beautiful papers, and there is one more sheet to this, but I don't actually have even one little piece of it. It's but you can look in the book. And then on the other side, you've got some other beautiful prints, and they are in those nice harvesty type colors, your soft greens, your crumb cakes, and your bumblebee. I'm wondering who out there likes these sort of autumn type colors. I do like them. And in this suite, there's also this crochet ribbon, which I personally love. I love that kind of tatted, sort of thick look. And we also have our brushed metallic gems, and there are also gold ones, but I've used them all in some kits that I made. And another favorite, the time-worn type embossing folder, and we will be using that this evening, so I'll show you that close up later on. There are a lot of samples online using the larger flowers and the dies, and tonight I wanted to focus on the smaller flowers in this set that aren't so commonly used. And I've used one of the samples in the catalog as my inspiration, but I have changed it up a bit. So what we're going to do is start with that stamp and the Versamark, and we're going to stamp that onto a piece of basic white. Oh, I see I still have a little bit of other colors still on there. And normally that would come out clear if your stamps were clean. And then we're going to emboss that by putting some white embossing powder over the top. And then you just shake off the excess. And then we use our heat tool to dry that until it comes up shiny. And I do have one already ready here. And so you can see that it's gone from the powder to that shiny look. Then the next thing we're going to do is do a technique called Emboss Resist. And I'm just going to put a little something underneath me just in case I go off. And so I'm using my blending brush and the soft succulent ink. I personally love this green. Do you love this green? A lot of our greens in the Stampin' Up! Collection are more yellow greens. And this one has definitely got more blue in it. So it is a nice something different. So just when you think you've got lots of greens, you know, we come out with a different one that is got a different undertone to it. And we're going to just use the blending brush. And I always like to take that first bit off, and then just use your blending brush over those images that you stamped. And you might need a couple of layers depending on how dark your ink is, or how heavy-handed you are, how much ink is on your brush. And you'll see how putting that ink over the top just really brings out those white images. So this is a technique called Emboss Resist. Now this one I'm going to leave clean, but a sample I'm going to show you later, I did use the time-worn type at this point over the top, and then you can decide which way you like it better. Now the next step is we're going to layer that onto a soft succulent mat. And then I'm choosing to use a crumb cake base tonight, because I like that harvest look with more of the warm colors. To be honest, it's not really what I gravitate towards often. I tend to like more the purples and the blues and the kind of wine colors, but it's good to always try something different. And I know that someone out there, these will be your favorite colors, so we need to try some different things. Next, we'll use some little strips of that Nature's Harvest Designer Series paper. And this, again, is another great little project for using up your little strips and scraps that we all end up left over. So I'm going to start with that bumblebee strip. I'm going to line it up against the white, and so that I'm covering the bottom of those flowers. And then I've got this piece that has all the colors in it. It's good to have papers that are more solid and then ones that bring all the colors together. Those tend to be the most useful prints in your pack. I want to put my flowers on next. So what I've done here is I've used the same stamp that I have stamped here, but this time I've stamped it on white and I've used that saddle brown stays on ink. How many of you didn't know that we had brown stays on ink as well as the black? So I wanted to use just something a little bit different. And because I'm using basic white paper, I can't really watercolor it effectively. So I'm going to use my blender pen, and I have done videos of what medium, so whether you're using a blender pen, Stampin' Blends, your watercolor painter, your watercolor pencils, on which papers. So I'm using this because this basic white paper doesn't really cooperate really well with the water painters, which would probably normally be my preference. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up a little bit of ink right off the lid with my blender pen, and then I'm just going to color in these flowers. And I'm not going to be too careful. I'm going to kind of go for that messy look, that watercolored messy look. Then when I'm ready to switch colors, all you need to do is just kind of color it on a scrap paper until it runs clear again. But be careful to not scrub the tip of your blender pen, because you want to keep that tip nice and sharp for as long as you can. And then I'm going to pick up Cajun Craze and just put that in through the middle. So these are the colors that are in this paper where I've got the multiple colors in there. And then I'm going to grab my Soft Succulent just to add some green in through here. And again, you can be really precise, but I'm going to go for the more imprecise look with this. Now the pen naturally just kind of runs out of ink as you go, but that's nice because it gives you some light areas and some dark areas. Then the next thing I'll do is use the die to cut this out. Okay, so I've cut that out with the die, and I did cut off the bottom of the flowers because they were going to interfere. And then I've used my mini and regular size dimensionals on the back. And you can see I did this first in black on the other side, and then decided that black was actually a little bit too harsh for what I was doing. So there is a place for your gray and your brown inks so that you don't have quite such a harsh outline sometimes. Then the next thing I want to do is tie a big loopy bow with my linen thread. I hope all of you have linen thread in your stash. I use it all the time. Probably 75% of my projects have linen thread on them. And what I want to do is create quite big loops with this. And then just cut. Oops. Those are not my ribbon cutting scissors. Okay, so we have our big loopy bow here. And I'm going to use a glue dot and glue that and adhere that down about right here. Oops. It doesn't matter that that glue dot's showing because we're going to cover that. Just make sure that these words are long enough. Yes, they are. Okay, so now what I want to do is just gauge. This needs to go about here, but I don't want to put dimensionals where that knot is or my flowers. So I'm just going to put dimensionals on the ends here. So you'll want them something like this, just so that you don't have too much bulk right in through the middle here. What I've done here for the words is I have white embossed the words from this set on that wonderful cork paper. This is also in this suite, the cork paper, and it's just a nice brown paper that has a wonderful actual texture to it. However, it is still quite flat and it's quite thin, so it's easy to die cut and, as you can see, stamp on. I might just cut this tail so it doesn't hang off the card too much. And then the last thing we want to do is just add some of these brushed metallic gems. I'm just going to put them about like that. And there we go. Then inside your card, you can go ahead and do that emboss resist a little bit on the inside as well if you would like. So this is the sample that I made earlier. This one I've left quite clean. This one, I used that Timeless Texture embossing folder on the background. Which one do you like better? Do you like it with the clean look or with that texture? I wondered if it was a little bit too much, but I actually, in looking at both, I think I like both. It's just a different look. And this one I used the crumb cake background. This one I used a white background. So even just that minor change quite changes the feel of the whole project. And also on this one, I used a little bit of sandpaper and just sanded the edges a bit just to add that little bit more texture. So you can go as textured and vintage or as clean as you like with this layout. Okay, let me show you a few other samples. So this is one that I shared when I did my video on watercolor pencils. So I have stamped here also with that saddle brown stays on, and I have stamped on the linen paper. So it's actually fabric paper and then colored with my watercolor pencils. And I've used that beautiful folder there in the background and some more of these papers. And I have used that crochet ribbon. And what I did was I filled a spritzer bottle with water and a few drops of ink refill and dyed that to match the project. Now, this project was not made by me. This was given to me by my friend, Sylvia Patterson, and just a very different look. Didn't use the papers or the colors in the suite at all, and used instead your purples and your greens and combined it with the wreath stamp. So she's die cut these wheat dies in white and then colored them in to match. Now, in this project I shared when I did a bedazzling paper video, and so these papers actually discontinued as of 30th of September, but still wanted to show you it as a concept because you could recreate this with maybe foil papers or colored papers, but just recreate the layout on this. If you happen to have the bedazzling papers, then this is a good one to create. And then this one was made by my friend Karen Hadler, and this one uses, of course, completely different papers, but she just used that stamp very simply, all in one color without any coloring there. So that was very effective. And then my last sample here just uses the papers. So if you want to have more of a rustic Christmas type look, using the stars and those more non-traditional colors in your Christmas cards. So there you go. If you have any questions or comments, or if you want to leave me a comment and let me know which one of these was your favorite, I would love that. And thanks for joining me tonight. This is Jackie Williams. Bye-bye.